Hey guys, so in this video today I'm going to be talking about nutrient timing of carbohydrates, which is a massive topic that I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for. So I'm going to make sure that I explain it to you in a lot better detail in this video. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is basically getting a better understanding of GI and GL, and then also understanding fiber and how all of these different factors actually affect what type of carbohydrate consumption you're going to consume, and then also the nutrient timing of carbohydrates, which is a big confusing topic out there for a lot of people. So what I'm going to start off with is a lot of people will ask, should you have carbs pre-workout? Should you have carbs post-workout? Should you have carbs through all your meals throughout the day, or should you only be having them at certain meals? Now, this is a massive question, and the simple answer to that is there's not going to be one black and white answer for everyone, but I can give general recommendations in terms of what I would personally do or recommend with a client. So let's start off with what those terms are that I spoke about at the start. So GI is glycemic index. Now, glycemic index is basically the rate at which it has an impact on your blood sugar or blood glucose levels. So if you have something that's very high on the GI scale, it's going to have a very fast and rapid impact on blood glucose. Now, if you are someone that has issues with diabetes, issues with insulin, this is going to be something that you need to think about in a little bit more detail. If you're the average person, it will not affect you to a massive extent. The biggest thing that you need to think about in terms of GI and GL is how it will affect your energy levels, and then also how fast something will be broken down, digested, and absorbed within the body. So something that's higher GI is going to give you a faster boost of energy because it's going to be broken down a lot more fast, it's going to be straight to that blood sugar, and it's going to give you a bigger energy peak. Whereas something that is a lot lower GI is going to take a little longer to digest and actually get to that bloodstream and facilitate and give you energy, and then eventually obviously get into muscle glycogen. And so what you need to understand, if you think about that in simple terms, if you're going to go train and you're going to do something very quickly. So let's say, for example, you're going to go and within half an hour, you're going to go for a run. Now, you haven't eaten, let's say it's first thing in the morning. Do you think it's going to be a better idea to consume something higher GI, higher sugar content, faster digesting, or something lower GI that's slower digesting, maybe a slower burst of energy if you're going for, say, a 30-minute run? Now, if you're going for a run of that length and you're first thing in the morning, you're about to get up and go, I would say the higher GI option is going to be the better option because it's going to digest a bit faster, get straight into your bloodstream, you're going to feel better, give you an instant burst of energy. So that in simple terms is explaining why we would consume that. Now, let's put into example a little bit more detail in terms of a weight session. Now, with resistance training, obviously a big factor is also muscle breakdown. So we need to factor in that it's probably essential to also have some protein pre-training or any kind of amino acids. So that can be branched chain, EAAs, essential amino acids. But again, we're not talking too much about protein here, so I'm going to stick to carbs. All right, so in terms of that, if we're going to go pre-training, the biggest thing you need to think about is when you're eating. So for example, if I have a client who say is going and training first thing in the morning and they only allow about maybe half an hour before they're going to actually get into that gym session, I would encourage them to eat something a little bit on the higher GI scale. So something that doesn't matter if it's got a bit more sugar in it, a bit less fiber, it's going to digest a bit faster, feel light in their stomach. They're not going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be able to really get that down. It's going to then help with muscle glycogen. It's going to help with everything going on in the body. Now, if say, for example, there's someone that trains in the afternoon and they have a job where they can't really eat a big meal before they go to the gym, let's say they eat their lunch at 1 o'clock and then they go to the gym about 4 o'clock, and they can only really squeeze in kind of that meal is their pre-workout meal, then that's a good like 2-3 hours before they're actually getting to the gym. So I'd encourage them in that setting to have something a little bit lower to moderate GI, as well as having that meal with some fats and protein as well, a big hit of protein to keep them feeling full. So it all kind of depends on when you're training and then also what type of training you're doing. If you're going to go and do some Ironman race that's 3-4 hours, I'm going to encourage them to eat a lot more carbohydrates in terms of overall volume. So you've got to look at a few things. What is your overall carb intake? If it's quite high, obviously we could go more percentage based. So you're having a percentage of carbs pre-workout, post-workout. If you are doing a longer duration training session, then you may want to also extend the pre-post workout carb amounts. I would say if you're doing something longer than say an hour, you want to increase the pre-workout carbohydrate amounts. If it's a workout anything less than an hour or around about that mark, you'll find that you can get actually quite good results from more having higher carb intake post-workout. So my general rule of thumb, and a very simple one to follow if you are confused about all of what I've just said, is keep your carb intake pre-workout anywhere between about the 20 to 30 to 35% of your net carbohydrate intake for the day. Everyone's going to be different, but play around with those amounts and see what you feel better on. Again, if you're training first thing in the morning, you might want to consume a little bit less purely from a digestion standpoint. So you might be okay training on, say, 20% of your net carbohydrate intake, as well as having some BCAAs or something like that. If you're someone like me who likes your carbs pre-workout, I generally will train in the evening and have pre-workout between 25 and 30% of my net carbohydrates for the day. So let's give you an example. If you're having 200 grams of carbs a day and you want to consume 30% pre-workout, we're going to do some maths here. So 10% is going to be 30 grams. So you're going to be consuming 60 grams of carbohydrates pre-training, and probably having that of a moderate to higher GI depending on when you're training and how many hours between the training and your pre-workout meal is. So for me, for example, I generally eat my pre-workout meal about an hour to an hour and a half before I train, and I'll tend to have moderate to higher GI. So that will usually be some form of fruit, some form of cereal or oats, anything like that. Or I'll blend a smoothie and put those ingredients in it if it's closer to training to help break it down a little bit faster. Blending the oats, that sort of thing is going to aid that. Now, that's pre. Now, post-workout, same sort of thing. Now, if you're having a massive break before you get to your post-workout meal, say for example you finish in the gym and you're going to drive home, you're going to go to the shops, grab some food, cook dinner, and it's like an hour, hour and a half until you actually eat, then you're going to then also look at the combination of how much you've already had during the day and then factoring in how much you're going to have post-workout. So again, general rule of thumb here, and an easy one to follow, is anywhere from 30 to 50% of your carbohydrate intake for the day post-workout. I generally like, for most clients, around the 40% range. If you're on a lower carbohydrate intake, you can always reduce that as well. If you've got a lot of carbs to play with, then it's not as much of a factor. So what that would mean, if I was on 200 grams of carbs a day and I was having 40% post-workout, then that is going to have me on about 80 grams of carbs. Now I've had my 60 pre, so 80 and 60 is 140. I've got 70 grams of carbs left to spread over the rest of my meals. So let's say, for example, I was having 5 meals a day. I've got 3 meals left, and I'm going to spread that 70 grams out. So if you think about that, it's about 20 to 25 grams per meal that we're having left over of carbs. So again, if you're someone that you find if you have a large carbohydrate hit, you can get a bit fatigued. A lot of people have like a carbohydrate high where they kind of go into a bit of a carb coma, we call it. Then you may want to reduce those amounts and spread them out more evenly throughout the day. It should all come down to how you feel is a big one. There is not going to be a massive impact on body fat in terms of how you nutrient partition. It's very hard. The research is a little skewed. There has been shown to have effects on recovery, rehydration, less soreness or DOMS with having a higher carbohydrate intake post-workout and pre-workout, and also getting better endurance out of sessions. In terms of actual fat loss, there hasn't been shown to be a massive difference. So you don't need to stress about it too much, but in terms of how you feel and then also energy peaks and troughs throughout the day, it's a better idea to time and percentage and partition a bit more carbs around your workout. Another easy way of thinking about it is 50% of your carbs around your training session, and that's a really simple one as well. So it might be a case of 20% pre and 30% post. I still think that's a little bit low. I would probably prefer my clients to be on about 60% around their workout, and then that remaining 40% spread throughout the day. Now, that's talking about carb timing with training. Now, if we're talking about carbs on a rest day or a day that you're not actually hitting the gym, what do you do with it then? So again, it comes down to the individual and what you're doing on a day-to-day activity level. Now, I always recommend my clients that have a very active job that they start their day with some carbohydrates and they have a pretty even amount spread throughout the day. They may even have a little bit less in the evening when they're not as active and have a higher serve of fats. So someone like a laborer, someone that's on their feet maybe in a retail position, someone that's a hairdresser, all these sort of jobs where you're on your feet all day, you want to be consuming a pretty steady intake of carbohydrates, keep your energy levels up, have you feeling alert. Now, if you were, for example, to have no carbs throughout the day on a rest day or keep them very low and then have them all at night, you're probably going to be feeling a little bit flat. And then what can tend to happen is when you get home at night, you're like craving carb central. And this is what I find, that if you try to limit your carbs so much in certain meals, you have a lot higher chance, often for some people, not everyone, of actually then binge eating or overeating, or really having severe carb cravings, having your blood sugar levels drop quite low and your energy feeling really flat. So my rule of thumb is that if you are someone that already struggles with those things, is keep them pretty even. Don't make the percentages too big of a change. Keep it nice and simple, and just start off by having a little bit more pre-workout and post-workout than what you would have for the rest of the day. So let's say, for example, you're someone on that 200 gram mark, and you're someone that already struggles a little bit with keeping your energy levels balanced, with maybe your food relationship. I would start off by maybe spreading, 20%, 20%, 20%. So that's 60 in your meal 1, 2, 3, and then your pre-workout might be as simple as the same, 20%. So it just depends on what you want to do with it and how you want to spread it out. But rule of thumb being that you want to keep it simple and not overcomplicate it, and be sure that you listen to your body, okay? At the end of the day, listen to your body, and then also look at your fat intake. So we have also spoken before, and be sure that you watch the video on fat timing as well. Because the big thing is the relationship between carbohydrate timing and fat timing. If you're gonna bump your carbs up for a meal, it's a good idea to reduce your fat intake for that meal, if again it is around a training session, because it's gonna slow down the digestion of that meal as well. Now, for example, I've got some clients who have very sedentary jobs. I'm pretty sedentary, I'm at a desk a lot, working online. Then I generally will have a higher fat meal in the morning. Keep the carbs moderate, still some in there, don't completely pull them out, and generally lower GI sources. And I'll generally have low GI sources all day, and then pre-post workout, those higher GI carbs, a lot bigger intake, and really replenish the body before bed. A lot of people get scared about having carbs before they go to bed. I love it. It helps you sleep. It can help release happy hormones that have you in a sense of relaxation and serotonin in the body. So don't fear carbs in the evening. The biggest one, if you are someone that struggles with sleep, is to reduce the sugar content, because sugar can keep you a little bit alert and have your energy a little bit up and down. So what I mean by that is, if you're someone that struggles with that, keep your sources a bit lower GI. I think people get confused between carbs and sugar, and again, the difference between processed and unprocessed sugar. So again, just limiting processed sugar in the evenings if sleep's a bit of a factor for you, and away from your training session meals. So I always like to see my training meals as kind of like my fun foods, because that's where I can have some cereal, have different things, have a bit of honey, jam, those sort of sugar-based products, and it not be as much of an impact on my energy, because I want my energy to come up. So I want you guys to think about it in that sense, and that's the same with your post-workout. Your muscle glycogen's depleted from the workout, so if you're having something like that, the uptake's going to be really efficient. If you're having something really sluggish, so let's say, for example, you go train and then go eat a curry, and you go eat like this heavy fat, stodgy kind of meal, it's going to actually be very slow to digest and absorb and have you feeling very good afterwards. For example, another great workout, a better post-workout meal in terms of a takeaway would be something like sushi, because it's relatively low fat, high carb if you pick the right ones. Obviously there's avocado and things like that, mayonnaise, just got to pick the best options, and just being mindful of things like that. What are the type of food choices you can have post-workout that are going to be a great option comparative to, say, what you might have for breakfast? So for example, if you're going to go train first thing in the morning, a great breakfast might be something as simple as like, some gluten-free cereal, maybe a bit of banana, and like a protein shake, something really fast digesting. If you're not going to go train in the morning, that meal would not really fill you up for the rest of the day or have much sustained energy. So a better option would be something like oats, which are a lot lower GI, and then maybe having some whole eggs with it, something with a bit more fat intake. So this is the way I want you to start seeing your meals, as thinking about your meals that fuel you for energy, rather than them just being like, carbs are bad, or this is bad, or sugar's bad. It's more about where you utilize them throughout the day. So I really hope you enjoyed this video on carb timing, and it's helped you get away from some of those myths out there. So enjoy your carbs, and I can't wait to see some of the meals that you guys have. I love to see them. Post them in the Facebook group. All right.